listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
We have another very... As you can tell, we have another lady in the Ladies Lounge today. Super exciting. We have a Conversation with Creatives episode. It has been a while since we've had a creative.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of other ladies, but not creative ladies. So this is going to be really fun. We have another Lutheran lady that may be familiar to some people in our listening audience. And if not, you're going to want to be familiar with her after this. So Erin, who are we talking to today?
Today we have Anna Hart joining us. And if you are familiar with Anna, there's a good chance it's through her Anna's Threads sewing business. You can find it on Facebook. We'll give you more information at the end of the episode so that you can seek out all of her stuff and see what we're talking about. But we are excited to have her on here. You know, I feel like it has been a frequent topic that comes up, or at least, it's a frequent topic that comes up in the Facebook group where people are asking questions about making stoles, about making paraments, just about things that I would categorize as liturgical sewing. But honestly, that's sort of a loose categorization on my part. So before I give you a chance to introduce yourself at all, because I've shortcut that part of the conversation, we'll circle back. Why don't you start, Anna, by telling us, sorry.
We're just jumping right in. It's fine.
We're just jumping right in. Tell us, is liturgical sewing a thing? And if so, what is it?
Good question. So first off, I have never had the opportunity to have any formal training in what I do. So if any, for all the people saying, my husband's a pastor and he wants me to do this because I own a sewing machine, you're not alone. But my husband is not a pastor. So I don't even have a pastor that's in my living room to pick his brain over this stuff. All those things, vestments, paraments, I don't do them at the moment, but albs, surplices, anything that the church is wearing or your pastor's wearing, the deacon's wearing, or, some organists, acolytes are wearing would all be liturgical or ecclesiastical is a really fun word that I like. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and here we are.
Would it be appropriate just to briefly describe, because I hear all, paraments and albs, and for those of us who are not really
those are some
literate
pretty technical terms.
Yeah. Can we just do like what each of those means or what they kind of look like?
Bree's husband is being ordained really soon.
Also
so she needs to know, she needs a glossary of all these liturgical vestments and
Look
paraments.
at my pen. Hold on.
Yeah. So while we have an expert in the studio, let's give Bree the education she needs.
Right.
Well, how I usually describe an alb is what most pastors in the LCMS, I'll say most, just in my experience, you'll see them wearing the white robe with a rope or cincher around their waist and a stole usually over that, which is, the scarf type vestment of the fancier fabric with the color of the season. And all of that goes over their trousers and their clerical if they're wearing vestments. So I know not everyone does, but that would be an alb. And historically, the alb would go underneath and only underneath the chasuble, which is your liturgical poncho, for lack of a better term.
That is so perfect.
Yes.
But really, it was a first century overgarment. And obviously, we're not wearing this as a rain poncho now, but that's where it came from. So that was worn over everything else. And the stole has kind of traveled under and over that, I think, over the centuries, but that would be underneath. And when we talk about the surplice and the cassock, we used to fondly refer to the cassock as being your matrix robes. So the big black I mean,
okay.
it's terrible. That's what it looks like when
We
it's
all
on its
think
own.
it.
But you
We all
don't,
think it.
Exactly.
you don't wear that by itself, but it goes underneath the surplice, which is made of a surplus of fabric, I would love to say.
It's
and
the angel
those are
wings
usually
that go over.
Yeah, yeah. And that's more your daily offices type vestment. You're just having matins or evening prayer, vespers. And those can be worn with a stole over it. It's kind of, that's where you get the adiaphora, or a big part of it, I think, is what's being worn for those services. And yes, even the chasuble falls under that. It's just a chasuble, if you're wearing it, is in the context of divine service. And paraments are all over the map. Like, I don't know who decided every time a church is founded and built what they're going to have and how much and where, but they decide that. And then when they come to me and I'm in a good mood and I say, yeah, sure, I'll try to make that. It's all, we have these things and they're this size and they go in these places, and it just every single place is different. But you'll have the altar frontal pretty often, which hangs down in front of the altar and lies up over the top. And then the pulpit and lectern will often have something on them. And sometimes if there's banners on either side of the church, that might also be considered part of the paraments, because they also change with the seasons. And then there's all the other altar linens that kind of fall under the parament category. But hope that's helpful.
No, that's huge. Thank you.
So now when Matt calls home and he's like, honey, where is my chasuble? You can be like, which one? Oh, that's the thing you need.
That's the one. I left it in the dryer. Sorry. Probably don't put that thing in the dryer.
Please don't. I mean, some might, if they're very
here
simple.
first.
I will tell you, if you have a straight up conversation with your altar guild right after you get to a congregation being like, this is not my gift, they'll be like, okay, we'll take this one.
Good to know.
Because they care very much about those beautiful liturgical garments and vestments and paraments, and they don't want you ruining them. So,
they're
expensive, and for good reason. They're expensive, and there seems to always be one lady or gentleman, I suppose, on the altar guild that knows exactly how to care for every single garment in a very specific manner, and it is a wealth of knowledge. So there will be somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, and how to get stains out of everything too.
Yeah,
yes, I need that.
So Anna, apparently you have a wealth of knowledge in this area, and I'm so glad you do. Is this like your lifelong dream to be an expert in liturgical and ecclesiastical sewing? How did you get from presumably normal child to where you are now?
I was not normal.
That probably helps.
Let's be clear on that.
I was almost a double major in fashion and music. Now, almost.
That's cool.
But turns out that just majoring in music is more than enough on its own.
True.
So I studied at the Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University of Bloomington, and it's a very secular school. It's a state university, but they have an excellent sacred music focus in their organ department. I mean, it's incredible. And I'm just the disconnect between the university itself and what I studied in school it's mind-blowing. And then right next door was the building where they house their fashion department at the university. And I was like, well, it's so close. And I really wanted to study fashion design, but I didn't want to go to New York City for some reason. And turns out no one else in my class knew how to sew already. And I just went, like, I don't know if I can do this. So that was that. But I don't think I knew a lot about vestments or paraments until my sophomore year of high school. We transferred churches to one with a more liturgical focus, and actually ended up doing a research paper because I was homeschooled with Dr. Stuckwich. He took me to Notre Dame Library and dusted off his alumni library card, and we just brought back stacks of books. And so he may argue with this, but I think he just wanted me to do the research for him so I could fill him in on all this. He already, he loved his closet of chasubles, and there was that. So I didn't actually make one until Christmas 2013, after I graduated from college. And all I had was a very particular pastor, which I love. I love when they're like, I want this, this, and this, and I am this tall, so I don't want it any longer than this. I'm like, great, thank you. Because sewing for someone who's in Kentucky when you're in the New Orleans metro area can be quite dicey. So there was that. And I had a retired sewing pattern from one of the big sewing pattern companies you can pick up at Joann's that someone had gifted to me. And I was like, all right, let's do this. I had done the research and done my best shot at this paper. I mean, I don't want it to see the light of day now, but that's just how I feel about everything I write. So I don't know, but yeah, it was just kind of, all right, we're doing this now. And that was it.
So what goes into creating, you can take your pick of what object you'd like to describe, but what goes into creating a chasuble, a stole, an altar parament, whatever, pick one. Is it all machine done? Do you do a lot of designing by hand first? Do you do handwork? Is it all of that? What would go into creating one of those?
And how
pieces?
long does it take you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and my husband hates this, and I can't peg down how many hours it took me because I have 4 kids and counting, and I'm not just sitting there in my locked, tranquil sewing space producing art. I mean, we can pretend that's what happens, but and I'm not clocking in. It's kind of like, well, everyone is happy getting soaked in the hose in the backyard for long enough for something to happen. So I realized very early on that I wasn't going to make anything unless someone came to me and wanted a specific thing. And, it's not I made this, you can buy it. That almost never pans out. And I'm okay with doing whatever they want. And it used to involve a lot more time than it does now. The addition of an embroidery machine to my arsenal of machinery really changed things, because I used to have to sit around, and if a pastor said, I want a Cairo on one end of the stole and I want a cross and crown on the other one, I would have to sit around on the corners of eBay digging for an iron-on or just a pre-embroidered patch that I would put on there, because in an ideal world, I would draw it out and hand stitch flawless emblems on the end of each stole, which people did, and some still do, and that's awesome, but I would never get anything done if that's what I did.
Sure.
And I also like to make things as affordable as possible. I hate charging money. So there was a lot of time just digging around for what people wanted. It's a lot easier to find. It's called an embroidery file. I am not designing what I'm stitching out on the vestments, etc., paraments, what have you, because I am not a techie person. The software for that is extremely expensive. And so that's a whole other ball of wax. But when it comes down to it, maybe it takes me 4 hours to make a stole. So that's just a stole. And with maybe if it's a chasuble and stole, I'm guessing 10. But again, I'm not sure. And it depends on what it is, how much hand stitching there is involved. But very early on, I was like, I'm going to find the way to do this with the machine as much as possible, because time really is of the essence. For me, between the demands of children, occasional very quick turnaround requests, and my propensity for putting things off as long as possible, which some of my previous customers know all too well. Just be like, oh, well, you need it. Like, it's white, so you need it for Easter. So, like, you'll have it by then. It's terrible. I've done slightly better lately, but yeah, there was a ton of research initially in finding where I was going to get the fabrics from, because they would say, oh, I want this color. And it was, well, are we going to straight to CM Almy and ordering what they have? Like, they almost always have fabrics available by the yard, but occasionally, right around March 2020, there was a lot of flakiness with the availability of certain supplies that were coming from Italy. I don't know what happened there, but just working around things like that has happened. Or if they say they already have paraments at their church, but the pastor doesn't have, or they don't have a chasuble and a stole, or it belonged to the previous pastor. And so he wants one that will match what they have already as closely as possible. So there's figuring out what we're working with already or what we're trying to match, kind of digging that up. And yeah, I love when people know exactly what they want, but I'm also, open to giving people options, but it can be very overwhelming. I think I just I'll send these links off and be like, there's a lot. Good luck. And I really can't tell you what to do. Here's the whole internet. I mean, it's not quite that bad, but
yeah.
So yeah, I guess I like picky customers.
Well, and just being a creative person and somebody who's done some like freelance graphic design, when somebody is like, I have this thing that I want you to do, but I have 0 box for you to work in here. Like, that's a lot harder to do as a freelance person than when somebody's like, this is what I need it for. These are the specifications.
Yeah.
Can you make the specific thing for me? And it's like, okay, yes, I know exactly how to do that. So yeah, I understand that. Yeah. I am really curious, and this is probably in the weeds. What kind of fabric do you actually use for paraments? You mentioned CM Almy, which is is it like the place to get parament fabric and things?
They're the most widely known just liturgical supply company. The good old Catholic CM Almy out in New England. They have it all. I do try to find other suppliers. What kind of fabric? A lot of what I've done, whether I wanted it to be or not, is polyester brocade, which is something that's available from Almy, from various eBay sellers, from smaller fabric warehouses. It's like the liturgical brocade. And those come in a lot of different patterns, and they come in different fibers. So polyester would be the most inexpensive because it's a synthetic. And then there's silk, which is very high dollar. It's gorgeous. It's like, that's the ideal, is to do a silk brocade. And that's available through Almy. There's this company. I've never ordered it from them, but because no one's paying that much. I don't blame them. There's this company in New York called La May that I use, and they have just absolutely stunning stuff. And then there's more of a plain woven, so think no pattern woven into the fabric, wool, which you can find most places, but Almy carries a nice one that would then come in colors that coordinate with the liturgical seasons. And I've done all those things. I've also done, a friend sent a specific colored stole and wanted a chasuble to match it, and that was quite the quest. And that was towards the beginning of this journey, so to speak. So lots of back and forth at the fabric store. Turns out greens are really hard to match.
There's so many of them.
So many. So, I don't know. So yeah, it's literally the weeds. I like digging through, trying to. But in my ideal world, I would only work with natural fibers. So anything but polyester. But me and that high horse are, we've broken up. He's galloped into the sunset. I mean,
natural fibers are wonderful, but Lutherans have budgets.
Yes.
So I appreciate you working within those realistic parameters.
I've tried to sell people on wool. I live in the deep South. I know what it is to be too warm. And even if your church has the best air conditioners and the best climate, I just can't imagine that wearing all those layers with a polyester lined polyester chasuble on top of it is the most comfy experience in the world. So
No, it's not. That's where the liturgical handkerchief comes in handy for wiping the sweat off your face.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm seriously, I was literally thinking earlier today, should I start marketing that?
Yes.
Comes with complimentary brow swabber.
Yes.
It's a genius idea. Liturgically colored.
I mean, that is an actual thing.
No.
It's called a maniple. I don't know if any of you
there is.
heard.
Of course. There's a name for everything.
Of course.
Which people may be scratching their heads because a maniple that they'd see is like a short stole and it is not to be used for wiping your forehead. But I actually had someone message me in the last day and say, "Hey, I want practical maniples," and I was like, "Yes," because originally it would have been a linen napkin that the deacon, the priest, whoever would wear over their wrist, and it was a liturgical napkin. And it's become like almost every other vestment item, it's become a decorative thing. But yeah, that's a thing too. But where was I going?
Nice.
I love wool a lot, unfortunately for me, but like a light, it's called a summer weight wool, would really be more comfortable as a top layer. I mean, it would still be a top layer, but it does breathe and has all these amazing qualities. So I have yet to do that.
All right. Well, sometime when you're looking to give your church or your pastor a very special gift, call Anna Hart and say, "I want the wool."
Yes. I feel like you're right. People do have budgets, but especially if it is a church who's looking to do this, it is the sort of thing you don't get yourself lots and lots of, like, it's not fashion. You have one Easter stole. You have one Pentecost, as far as what you need, as far as the basics go. So, and then you're going to use them for, a solid half century.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's okay to save up and then actually go ahead and budget for the fabric that is a little nicer.
Yeah. Get the good stuff.
I personally am a fan of the natural fibers.
I was going to say, Erin, don't you source artisanal fabrics and make all your own clothes?
Yeah, I do. So I'm right there with you. Anna.
Yeah. Poly satin.
But you gotta work with your customers and what they're willing. So
yeah, this is not throwing shade at anyone because I get it. Like, I am a musician's wife. I am not telling anyone that they need to fork out tons of dough.
Yeah.
But they're an investment. And, whether you're talking vestments or paraments, you're looking at something that is going to be a thing of beauty and of devotional significance for years to come. Obviously, the albs have to fit. The cassocks have to fit, but the chasubles,
true,
those can, be worn by pastor after pastor after pastor, and they're
indeed
a worthwhile investment. And I'm just curious, you mentioned making a switch from a less liturgical to a more liturgical congregation at one point in your past. And I'm wondering, when you look at them with an expert's eye, how do these beautiful liturgical vestments and paraments help, heighten your worship experience? That's not the right phrase at all, but tell me about how they help you in the worship service.
I may not be the best perspective on this because, to be perfectly honest, I do get distracted by vestments.
Okay.
Which is horrible. Maybe that's a terrible way of putting it. And also, to be fair, my childhood congregation, they wore albs and stoles. So really, the reason I preach the chasuble is that it is covering the man. I mean, no one, again, it's not fashion. No one is wearing the chasuble because it's fashion. I mean, so certain people, I'm sure, disagree with this. That's fine. But like a three-piece suit is fashion. And It's covering the man. You see the office there, and obviously you get the different colors for the different seasons, which is the same as the paraments. I mean, that's what liturgical colors are. You see the changes in church from season to season or week to week or day to day, depending on how many festivals you've got going on. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I get distracted, but that's because I look at it and I go, oh man, I still have that at home that I need to cut out and make. But
But you're so right that I don't think my dear husband has ever looked at me and gone, does this surplus make me look fat? It's not about him. It's not about looking good. Although, a lot of pastors are very careful and fastidious about their vestments because they respect the office. That the clothes are a symbol of the office. And when you put the clothes on, you're no longer just you are in the office. And hopefully people will look at that and go, okay, that is a man, but that is also my pastor, the under shepherd, the one who is preaching God's word and serving his sacraments to me, and seeing that and not maybe, the fashion that is underneath hidden. So I'm glad that you, thanks for reminding me of that, because I forget. All I see is, boy, somebody should have ironed that alb. Somebody like me should have ironed that. It's not my gift.
Well, my tip I give customers, especially the couple unmarried pastors that have bought a chasuble in a smaller congregation that like their altar guild has maybe never seen a chasuble before. I was like, if it's really steamy in the bathroom after a shower, hang it up in there.
Right.
And it could do a world of good without touching an iron. It's probably steam is better than grabbing the iron. So,
oh yeah. And those things just go on and on and on. There's a lot of fabric in them.
Yes.
How much fabric does it like on average take to make a chasuble? Because that is a lot of fabric.
It's 3.5 yards of length, and that's ranging from like 50 to 60 inches wide, depending on what fabric we're working with.
And that's multiple layer too, right?
Yeah. So 3.5 yards of the outer and of the inner, whatever that is.
We're going to need a bigger ironing board.
Yeah.
Right.
With all of that fabric, what does your sewing space actually look like? Do you have something that's set up in your house, or is it kind of just wherever it happens to land?
Looking at it?
Right,
No.
Yeah, like is it a kitchen table that just throw it? I don't know. Where do you actually do all of this?
Very early on, I set the rules like the workspace cannot be in our room. So when we were living in a 600 square foot apartment with 2 going on 3 kids, the sewing space was briefly in the kitchen, which thankfully was a dine-in kitchen too. Oof. So yeah, anxiety over white fabrics and toddler meals was very high.
Oh dear. I can feel it.
That is a sanctifying experience right there.
Right here. I'm sorry. Only taking Lenten commissions until they've learned not to throw their food.
Yes. My children are wonderful. I do have a sewing space. It is, as I tell everyone, it is behind my couch in the family room. But we are blessed to have a rather large family room, but it is still a 6-foot-long banquet table like you have in every church basement fellowship hall, with enough space between it and the back of the couch for me to waddle back and forth between that and the ironing board. And I have a standalone cabinet with mostly organized sewing supplies next to that. And on the other side, I have my collection of sewing machines on a shelf that I found on the side of the road in my neighborhood. But the collection of sewing machines is out of hand and not directly connected to the liturgical sewing. So it's not the chasuble's fault. And then the bordering on antique sewing machine that I do most of my grunt work sewing on has its own cabinet and is kind of in that same corner.
I love that. They don't make them like they used to, do they?
No. So don't get me started, but yeah.
Okay.
So what are the machines that you primarily use? You said you have multiple, but what are the ones that are in regular rotation in your work?
When I had one machine, it's a 2009 Fath German sewing machine that was gifted to me by my parents senior year of high school. And that has more of the bells and whistles and is computerized and does more than just straight stitch.
I have a Fath.
Aw, sewing machine sisters.
Yes. I love it until anything goes wrong with it. And then the frustration is a bit high, but it would, when it would have an issue. It would be a week before I needed to ship something for Easter. And I would have to take it to the shop and there would be a week turnaround and I had no backup. And that's around then. And when we bought a house, that the sewing machine collection really took off. Because I have to have a backup and maybe another backup.
Needs backup.
But all the backups aside and all the sewing machine tinkering aside, I do most of my sewing on a 1936 Singer. It is not an industrial machine. It was designed for home use. It's actually the same machine that was gifted to Queen Elizabeth by Singer. It was this big publicity stunt, but it's genuinely awesome. I love it. But all it does is straight stitches backwards and forwards, but it does a great job at it. And I have never had to take it to the shop because I'm its mechanic. So that joined the FAF. And then I somehow have 2 embroidery machines now. So I have...
Somehow. Don't know how that happened.
I don't know. Against my will. I don't know. I found a post earlier today that said that I was closing Honest Threads in 2019. I'm like, that's nice. So since then, the 2 embroidery machines have come along, and one is they're both designated embroidery only machines. One is a brother and does anything that would fit on a stole. It can do those sizes. And then the one that I got last spring does a little bit bigger. It's still not on the scale of the gorgeous stuff you see from Ecclesiastical Sewing, where they do the whole altar frontal and all that. They have legit embroidery machines that can handle something that size. But again, my space is behind a couch. So mine is fine and great for what I'm doing.
So you mentioned, the designs on the stoles, and you mentioned once that a pastor asked for a Cairo. What are the kinds of designs that you end up embroidering on stoles and various other paraments? And do you have a favorite liturgical symbol that you just love anytime anybody wants this?
I don't know if I can have a favorite yet because there's so many I haven't done yet. The one that I'm going to be doing for Lent coming up may become my new favorite, and that's purely personal, whatever whim. But the passion flower, it's called the passion flower, and it has a lot of connected symbolism, way cooler than a shamrock. Sorry, St. Patrick. So, and I didn't even realize how many emblems there were out there that feature the passion flower, and someone chose one, and then I went looking for alternatives, things that will
we were all simultaneously Googling what is a passion flower look
I gotta see this
right now.
Yeah, so I have a passion vine growing in my yard that blooms outside my kitchen window, and so I was like, yes, this is amazing because I'm a huge plant person too. So I guess I haven't done that one yet. We just did a shoot of Jessie for some Advent paraments, and I love that symbolism and that imagery too. And I think anything that, I love them all, but just those deeper nods of symbolism to real things that we're connecting. And I don't know as much about all of them as I wish I did. I don't know if this is just I'm not a pastor's wife weakness, but I don't think it is. It's just honestly, there's so many.
Most pastors' wives don't know.
Okay, good.
Well,
yeah.
No.
But there's so many out
and say
there.
a lot of pastors don't know the full range of rich symbolism that is available to them.
Mhm.
So find out for us and let us know.
Yeah, well, and a favorite in our congregation here is, I love that we have this on our altar, and then it's on our pastor's white chasuble, I think. And I did not make his chasubles; his wife did. Is the pelican piercing her
That's
breast
my
for her
favorite.
young, and
It's Rachel's absolute favorite.
My favorite Chrismon.
okay,
And I
And,
know it's completely made up. Like that legend is not biologically, scientifically legit, but it doesn't change the fact that I adore it. So
Yeah, who
thank
cares?
you, Pelican.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense too, like in Louisiana.
yeah,
Louisiana, exactly.
so
Wow.
it's carved on the front of our altar, and it's
that's cool.
such gorgeous. Or is it on the? Oh my goodness! Don't eat my words. Maybe it's not on the front of our altar. I'm trying to think. Do we have? I don't know, but it's on his chasuble. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. But it is on his chasuble, and I think I've seen it. It's somewhere else, like in local churches, and I think I just love that.
That's wonderful.
What is something you've made that you are, I don't want to use proud. I feel like that's not a good word to use, but like, what have you made in recent memory that you have been tremendously pleased with how it turned out?
Most things, I don't think I'm gonna like it until it's done. It doesn't matter if I've done the thing 6 times. Like at the end of the process, I'm like, yes, this is the best. I did some stoles that they requested, 7 embroideries in all on one of them. And so like figuring out the dimensions, I did like 2 colors of fabric. So it was the symbols for the different 2 parts of the catechism, and figuring out exactly what colors each part of that was going to be on what color that was then like applied to the main stole with it. Like I made the gold trim, like with gold silk that, was bordering each thing. It was a lot of like very precise work without knowing exactly what I was doing. Like, where do I want this to lie and all that. And then seeing it all come together and go, yes, I actually like this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So sewing is clearly not your hobby. This is your business. Do you do any like just hobby sewing, or at this point sewing is your business and you do other stuff with your other time?
Anyone who can't count how many sewing machines they have because they can't remember. like I'm sewing other stuff.
I love that for you.
And no, I'm not taking my piles of earnings and going and buying expensive machines. I love the poor orphaned vintage babies, and I'm nursing them back to health in my garage next to my husband, who's working on his classic car, and he's underneath, like, I don't know, trying to pry bolts out or whatnot. And I'm like,
you guys are made for each other.
A little couple time.
You're like a vintage sewing machine habit and a classic car habit. Just go hand in hand.
yes.
Yeah.
If only we know. We just need to find someone else who's like us, who's like immediate BFFs. But it's okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so is your hobby sewing or is it collecting machines? I'm not totally clear on this.
Well,
That's a great question.
I like to say my hobbies have hobbies. So the sewing's sewing's hobby is the sewing machines. I got into sewing and I was sewing garments because I hit my growth spurt. Nothing fit. I just wanted to sew my own dresses and I wanted to wear nothing but dresses. And anyone who knows me is cracking up right now. But and then the movie 27 Dresses came out and I was like, that's not enough dresses. So I have hit a little bit more of a wall with that, with changing cycles of life and children, etc., and also trying to focus more on the quality of what I'm making and not having the luxury of locking myself in my parents' basement and whipping something out overnight. So I know it's rough. So that has changed a lot. but I will always love dresses, and I wish I was better at making them for other people, because that's a whole other ball of wax. Like you talk about chasubles will fit all the pastures. Well, dresses very much not the case. So, of course, when I finished school and got married and moved across the country to a place I wasn't even sure was real before learning I was going to live there, to be perfectly honest, I thought, somehow I'll be able to work like dressmaking and alterations into my life, have a little side business. But like that just hasn't really been the reality, and it's okay. Because then I had 3 daughters who usually they don't usually like wearing what I make them, but sometimes they do. And but someday I'll teach them, and I'll love sewing for them. So there's that. And I recently reignited my love of completely opposite of liturgical sewing. It's hilarious, but I have a huge soft spot for my 18-inch dolls from childhood, and all the politics of American Girl besides, because we don't even want to go there right now. But I've had these since the 90s, and I was always like, I don't want to sew for dolls. Like that's just too. It's too frivolous, and I can't sew small things. I don't care about sewing for children or for dolls. Well, I'm pretty obsessed with sewing for dolls. I think it's that I can do elaborate historical styles that I can't really do for myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's so much faster when it's so small.
Yes. And much cheaper. I can use scraps.
Yes. Right.
I used to sew doll clothes. It's the only thing I ever successfully sewed for myself, and I would never use patterns. I would just like plop a doll down on top of the fabric and like trace around them and then sew it together. But yes, doll clothes making is fantastic.
Excellent. Anna, do you have any, do you have any future plans, ideas, things that you are sort of thinking, boy, in the next, I don't know, the next open-ended time frame, you're like, I'd like to actually try and expand into this area with your sewing business?
Yeah,
or
there's
outside of business. I don't know. Future plans with your creativity. We'll leave it at creativity instead of business.
Well, if we're talking specifically things that I would list at Crusom, making baptismal gowns has been on my list for so long.
Yes.
And it's really pathetic that I haven't, followed through. I have
That's another heirloom sort of item that people get.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I have made 2 ever, which is, it's really weird. I made one for a dear friend for their first grandchild that she still had a lot of kids at home. And I believe what happened was she had the pattern in mind, and somehow I ended up taking on that project. And I think the family still uses that in some capacity. And I did that in high school. And then I finally made one for my own kids. And I had been using the family like antique one, which was made for my like 3-year-old great grandfather when he was baptized. It's huge. It's huge. It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's gigantic. And it just made me nervous because babies are babies. And you're baptizing your 1.5-week-old. You have a lot more to think about than great grandpa's heirloom gown. So I was like, I just want the simplest thing that is definitely a baptismal gown. And I don't know if anyone else wants that, but I mean, I made it. It zips up the back. So you don't have, those beautiful tiny buttons are beautiful.
Yes.
But they're tiny buttons, and babies don't go, oh, yes, let me lie here while you button me in my tiny buttons. I don't know.
I think there's a huge market for a baptismal gown that is easy on, easy off, and not too frou-frou. Because we've gotten this question before. What do you put a baby boy in for the baptism?
Right.
Maybe you have this like family heirloom gown that is all ruffles and lace, and the dad's like, nuh-uh, that's not gonna work for us.
It used to be the thing, but nowadays it is not.
But actually what we have in our family is just a very simple white long infant gown that my mother made for my first child, and all my kids were baptized in it. And man, I wish I had 4 of those because I would give one to each child, to carry this on. So yeah, I think this is a winning idea.
If only I'll just do it.
Around all your other mom stuff.
Yeah.
Do
We
it.
urge you.
Like,
We urge you.
does the doll need another outfit, or should we finally maybe do this? I don't know, but
Potato.
there's a lot of things. I tried to embark on a cloth clerical collar journey because another friend of mine, I guess she made these for her husband and for some of his classmates at seminary. And she decided she wasn't doing that anymore because she hadn't done it in years. And she has her own little herd of mini-me's. And it was like, of course, me and my herd of mini-me's, I would love to take on this project. So I have thought about it. And again, I need to just start. And for me, that can be the hardest thing is into the unknown. Do I want to put in the time and effort and do this? And I know people want them, but I also don't know. It's another figuring it out. Everything from what fabric exactly I'm using for it, how I'm stiffening it. Is it going to be washable?
Please let it be washable.
Exactly. So it's not even that big of a thing. So I took down a list of guinea pigs, and then I never made them there. I said it would be free. I just need guinea pigs. And even then I had the baby or something, and that was it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the little, the nativity dolls that I've done. And
yes, I saw those on the Ad Crucem site. You've got these soft, plushy nativity dolls. They're cute.
My kids adore theirs. And it's really fun to make because the pressure's totally off with this. I want it to be recognizable and high quality, but it's not going to hang on the front of a pulpit for decades.
True. That is a very different type of sewing. Yes.
It's just a nice change of pace for me, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Also on the site here, you have aprons, which have got my eyes open. I am a very, very messy person. I should probably wear an apron 80% of the time. And so
I
do. Seriously, I had to change my shirt before this recording session because we were doing a video call and I spilled sauce on myself at lunchtime. Who does that? Okay.
I do.
So aprons are our friends.
it's
either that or a bib.
Well, I've been known to call my apron my bib, and I have a collection of mom bibs.
Perfect. Seems right.
Just own it. When you live life to the fullest, you make a mess.
Correct.
So yeah, they're beautiful. You do beautiful stuff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Speaking of beautiful, what is even the point? No, I mean, obviously we all like pretty things, but is there a deeper theological purpose behind having pretty things, pretty fabric things in our churches when we worship? You said they distract you in a good way or a bad way, I guess is my question. Why not just go super simple and save that, as Judas Iscariot once said, save the money and give it to the poor? Why invest in these beautiful works of art?
To be fair, obviously I'm more easily distracted by that specifically. And it's also my personality, my cross to bear, what have you. But I think what's distracting me sometimes is, considering that, why was this chosen? And not in a bad way, why? Why did they even do that? Just because there's a lot of there's intentionality behind it. You hope.
Mm-hmm.
And it fascinates me how much it varies from place to place. It's not standard. It's not the same. But what you're seeing in the front of the church, often it's whatever decisions some congregation leaders made in the 60s or 70s, and we're working with that or whatever. And, you can throw shade at the 70s. It's really fun to do. But they gave a lot of thought to this and probably a lot of, hard-earned money too. And I'm always, talk about inspiration. I'm always wondering, kind of keeping that in mind. My husband and I joke that we're the unofficial Lutheran bishops because we've been known to visit 5 different LCMS congregations in the span of a single Christmas break, So like, we're checking in on everyone. But yeah, I mean, it's a hard question to answer, but I mean, I am a church musician as well. And it goes right in hand with, why do we want beautiful music in the church? And I think it all comes down to, intentionality and historicity. That's the word I think I'm looking for. Us Lutherans, we're big on our tradition and we don't change. And I would argue that, but it's like, change, starting to use the chasuble is change. Like, no, we went away from that. So it is we're returning a revival of vestments, period, in some cases, but we'll say the chasuble specifically. I don't know. I like pretty things, but
yeah. Well, I love how you highlight intentionality, because that I think is a thing that really sets apart the art we see in a liturgical setting from a lot of, just art that you might see out in the secular world. Now, granted, a lot of secular art can have some, at least attempting to convey some very deep meanings, but liturgical art really does. Like, this is where I like pretty things meets the power of the gospel. If you see a pelican up on an altar parament, it's not just because whoever ordered it happened to like birds. It's because whoever ordered it happened to like Jesus and loved this story, this image of this self-sacrificial bird as presented in medieval bestiaries, of a bird piercing its own chest to feed its young. So that when you look at that, your eye will be grabbed by it and say, this is so pretty. I love this. Also, I love pelicans, but also I see the love of Christ in this image, and the gospel comes to me in a different way there too. So when you highlight the intentionality of it, one thing that I did not realize when I was younger is that every one of those paraments, every one of those symbols, every color, every stitch in there has meaning, and that meaning is Christ. And so that this is also a way of teaching. If you know what to look for, you can find Christ in these fabric arts, which is kind of cool. I'm glad you do it.
Thanks. I had a thought. I just lost it.
Oh, go back to it. I'm sure it was good.
No, I was just listening to the Thy Strong Word episode on the Levitical, the ephod, everything.
Oh, yeah.
And they make a really good point, which I'm probably going to not quote exactly right, even though I listened to it this morning, about, I think it just says something, about the skilled artisans made the fabric, but even God is not the pickiest customer, because he doesn't tell them how they're weaving this fabric. It's just that, they are given this ability and this gift, and they have a color scheme, and they're sent out to source the materials and make that. So I thought that was really cool. Just talking about beauty in the church, and the whole question of vestments can be, well, we don't have a whole chapter in the Bible telling you, and there shall be gold rings at the corners attaching it to this other thing, and it needs to have this specific stone on it. We don't have that for modern things, but I think a lot of these principles still apply.
Yeah. And we see in the Old Testament that the Lord also loves beautiful things and thinks that beautiful things are what should be, that they should be incorporated in our worship of him, that he is beautiful and he deserves our most beautiful offerings.
And that beauty sets those things apart too. Like when I go into a church that has like a level up of liturgical art and vestments that you don't see maybe in every church, like, where you are, like, you're in the presence of God. And I think that's having those visual reminders that this is a place set apart because of all of these beautiful things that point you to Christ is superb. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. I got distracted here. I was Googling, because when you said that in Exodus and Leviticus, we see God, recruiting these skilled artisans and saying, here, have all these scarlet and other colors threads and give me the things that are necessary for the temple. And then I was remembering this very specific detail in the book of Exodus, where he's describing the lampstands as they are to be, and describing that it should have almond flowers, buds, and blossoms in certain numbers of each. And I thought, when you talked earlier about what a delight it is to work with somebody who has a very clear vision for what they want so that you're able to just get them exactly that. I feel like this is just one of those moments where there's a very clear vision of this beauty that is to be presented in the house of the Lord. And that Old Testament temple is such an inspiration for us. This place of beauty that is for God's people that will remind them of his own heavenly beauty. It's good stuff.
As we're winding down, I know ladies in the ladies' lounge have frequently asked about creating vestments, creating stoles, all of this stuff. Do you have advice for people who want to do this kind of thing? Maybe not the super complicated version, but a simple version of a stole or something that they would like to gift somebody. Do you have advice for people who want to do that for themselves, for their church, for their pastor?
Yes. Speaking of things that I've thought about doing and wish I could, but I have to know my limits. I can't tell you how many times I've sat there doing the 4 hours of work or whatever it actually is, making a stole, but how many more hours would it take for me to make some sort of video, kind of at least loosely stepping through this? And I have no idea because I haven't tried. But all that aside, actually, I have helped someone who wanted to make a stole for their sons. I don't know if it was his ordination, but it was like seminary graduation. And I pointed them to a couple of places. And I think a lady in her altar guild helped her with some things, like someone with a little more like sewing confidence, shall we say. I don't think you need to be a master seamstress to do this. I think attention to detail is the main thing, because I've had people be like, oh, you must be so skilled to do this. And it's like, no, I'm just like a perfectionist, hyper personality.
That's fair.
But, basting is your friend. That's when you do the big stitches that you can tear them out easily if you mess up. If you really want to be careful with whatever, if you're buying some special fabric to use. But I sent her in the direction of a book called Vestments and How to Make Them. And it doesn't even have a name of an author on the front. I think it's called Vestments and How to Make Them from Catholic Authors Press. This is something Pasto Stuckwich gifted to me when we were doing our whole project. And it gives you just a really in-depth description of every possible vestment I can think of. There is a little maybe dated and they are in a certain style, but there's so many different styles. It's just, it's one of them. And it gives dimensions for, say, a stole. And they describe what materials to use. I kind of made my own choices on certain things. Like I decided I wanted it to have, most of them to have a satin lining on it just because I like the look of it and it matched what a lot of people had. And what fabric you're using in the front, which we discussed, and I direct them to the sources I usually use. Almy is a really easy one. It's like you go to their website. I think it's like the bottom left of their menu, and they'll have supplies or something like that, or fabrics and trims by the yard. And they have that there. And they can probably help with discussing options too. And stiffening the stole specifically has been a huge journey for me. It's like, what are you even supposed to use? I didn't know. So some didn't have any stiffening in them back in the day. I actually had one person who contacted me a couple of years later and said, can we do something about this? And I went yes. I didn't necessarily know exactly what I was doing. So that was a fun unmaking journey. I don't advise unmaking and remaking things. Try to avoid that. But
we always knew.
But a heavyweight sew-in interfacing. I've started using a duck cloth, which is basically a canvas, because it's pretty heavyweight, but I really like the weight. I bought some for the paraments I'm making right now. I was like, yes, this is what I should have been using all along, because I don't think it's going to disintegrate much over time, because it's a relatively heavyweight woven cotton. And I don't think it has a lot of synthetic stiffeners in it. It just is stiff. So it's not necessarily going to lose its body, etc. as much. Here's how big. This person, I told them to go to La Lame. It's called La Lame ink for fringes. If they want to put fringes on the end of the stole, they're really helpful over there too. It's a family run business. They have like office space on Times Square. My husband actually went there once and picked something up for me. Just casual trip to Times Square. And he said, yeah, it's just like a warehouse, like room just packed with all these amazing trims and fringes. And they have a lot of those. What I now embroider on a stole, they have them as patches, and some are iron on. I would always sew around the edge by machine as well, because ironing things on, I mean, if you've ever done an iron-on patch, you know what inevitably happens.
You end up sewing it on. That's what.
Yeah.
Right.
Or, digging it out of the bottom of the washing machine after.
And then sewing it on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm always happy to, do my best to answer people's questions about that. I always tell people, don't be afraid to message and ask for some secrets. I mean, I know you're probably not going out and starting some competitor business. And honestly, even if you were, I wouldn't care that much. Yeah, I wouldn't care that much. I'd be like, more power to you. Like, we need more Lutheran women doing this, because my ideal would be every church has their own Anna Hart who can measure the paraments and make new ones. I mean, not to make every church lady feel bad that they're not doing that, but in a perfect world.
I'm at peace. Although I do tell you, if I ever decided to make a stole, I would do a practice one with like cheap fabrics before I went and bought these gorgeous ecclesiastical brocades off of Almy or Lalame or wherever. These are I'm browsing them right now, of course. Assembling links, all these links, by the way, ladies listening at home, we will include in our show notes, to the book, to the fabrics, to the tassels, to Anna's Facebook page, to Anna's page at Ad Crucem. We'll hook you up.
Yes.
So many links.
All the links. Anna, is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we close our time together? Or not? You don't have to have anything. You can cut this part out.
Be patient with yourselves, especially if you're heading out, embarking on this journey. Like, I had a friend's mom who my friend and I were both learning to sew around the same time, and she was struggling maybe a little bit more. And her mom goes, "You must never pick up a seam ripper," to me. And I'm just really like, you just don't see me. You don't see me using the seam ripper. That's my secret. I have like 6 seam rippers.
Back behind and go behind the couch before you use your seam ripper.
Yeah, you don't see, the borderline anxiety attacks and the seam ripping and all that. I mean, it's not all seam ripping and panicking, but it happens. It happens to everyone, I think. Oh.
Yeah.
Because everyone tells me, oh, I did one sewing project at home ec and it was terrible. And I go, oh, like, don't give up.
Me too.
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, that's how it is with any creative venture.
Yeah.
You're going to have, you end up with a lot of stuff that doesn't actually turn out the way you want in order to get to the things that do turn out the way you want. And that's just kind of how it runs.
That's really good advice. Just because you had one bad experience or you made one dress where the bodice turned out really wonky, maybe don't let that be your last sewing project. Okay, I'm listening.
Oh, goodness. Anna, it's been super fun to have you on the podcast. I don't know how it's already been well over an hour. This time just flew by so fast. So thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really fun.
Yeah, thank you.
And of course, we will link to all of these places in the show notes, to Anna's threads on Facebook and also on Ad Crucem, and all of the other links that we've run through in the course of the hour. There's lots of different things. So if you're interested in doing this yourself, check out the show notes. There's going to be lots of resources there, and how you can contact Anna as well if you want to actually ask her questions directly. You can join us in our Facebook group as well, the Lutheran Ladies Lounge on Facebook. Lots of discussion there and several questions in that group already about what other women have done to create vestments and paraments and things. So there's already some questions and answers in the group that you can search for. And also we are on Instagram at Lutheran Ladies Lounge. We have some exclusive content there if you want to join us there as well. You can find all of our podcasts at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge or on your favorite podcasting app or on the KFUO radio app. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm on Twitter at Liturgical Poncho.
And I'm really not on Twitter at all anymore. But I'm still Rachel.
I think that's our next sticker. After the brick house, you got to make a liturgical poncho sticker.
Ah.
Okay. Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a review for us too. If you love the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast, consider financially supporting our producer, KFUO Radio, so we can keep doing what we do. Find out how at kfuo.org/give.